Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here on Good Sport Reviews. If you are new around here, please make sure to like and subscribe. The last video I did, the tier list one, was phenomenal in terms of the feedback I got. Over 1,400 views. I think I gained close to 20 subscribers just from that video alone. And a lot of your guys' comments has gone towards this video today. So thank you so much. If you are new, please make sure to like and subscribe. And today we are doing another tier list video, but there's a twist on this one, okay? So it's not the England squad, it's not my team, it's not Liverpool. It's every Premier League team ranked from how I think they've done so far this season, going into game week 9, I believe it is, game week 8 or game week 9. And we're going to be judging every team based on how well they've done: excellent, good, average, poor, bad. Now, there's a few things to take into consideration here. Any managerial circumstances affecting the club will be taken into account. Transfers, the money spent, how you're doing based on the expectation around your club. Was your club expected to be in the top 5 of the table, top 4, but you're in the bottom half? Things like this will come into consideration. So let's get to it. As you can see on screen now, guys, we have the tier list, and this is every Premier League team, all 20 of them. We're going to be ranking them from excellent down to bad, and we're going to start off with Arsenal, potential title winners, possibly. They did just beat Man City 1-0, rather convincingly, actually. They look really, really good. So far this season, they're unbeaten. 145 million net spend. It's a lot of money, but for the players they got, likes of Declan Rice, Timber, who is injured, but will come back better, and Havertz has question marks, but they've offloaded the likes of Pepe, Lokonga, Rob Holding. They've got rid of a lot of players that just weren't fit in their system, and they've finally signed players that can maybe take them over the top and push for the Premier League title. That's why they're in excellent. Next up, Aston Villa. We're going to put them in good. Villa, 5th in the table. They've had some big wins. The 6-1 over Brighton in particular was massive. Brighton got thumped, and we all know it. But they did suffer a 5-1 defeat to Newcastle at the beginning of the season, so swings and roundabouts. Villa have recruited well. Diaby looks like a really good player. Tielemans on a free. He's not hit the ground run just yet, but on a free transfer, you can't go wrong. Pau Torres has been injured, of course, and they are relying on a lot of their second choice players. And to be where they are, 5th in the table, I think that's still surpassing a bit of fan expectation. The only reason they're not in excellence is because they have, as I say, been thumped before, and that does come into account. They've conceded 12 Premier League goals, and that's something that they desperately do need to change if they are to make it from good to excellent. Next up, we have Bournemouth. Let's be real, Bournemouth were going in bad. 0 wins this season. They're second bottom of the table, I believe. They've only picked up 1 draw, or 1 or 2 draws even. They just look dreadful. They've gone from this counter-attacking style under O'Neill to this counter-pressing style of Areola, and it doesn't work. It's dreadful. They're trying to do this long-term future thing. It does not work, and they need to really address this. The signings they've made, while they seem good on paper, Tyler Adams, Alex Scott, fine, good signings, it's not working at the moment. They've spent over 100 million net spend, and for a club like Bournemouth, who, let's face it, are quite financially restricted to what they can and can't do, that is a lot of money, and it needs to change, or Areola could be the first manager sacked. Next up, we have Brentford, who are putting in poor. Now, Brentford are in poor and not bad because there's mitigating circumstances. They're missing Ivan Toney, who was their main source of goals last season and was unplayable at times. Visa and Embremo are having to step up and score a lot of goals for the club. I think they're on 50% overall, which is a lot. I understand they're strikers, but still. Brentford this season haven't recruited particularly well. They've not done exceptional work in the market, and there's a clear drop-off. The only thing that's keeping them from bad is the Ivan Toney situation and the fact they're not in the relegation zone yet. But Thomas Frank, he could capitulate. We just don't know. Maybe it's third season syndrome. Next up, we have Brighton. Brighton were putting them in excellent. And again, mitigating circumstances, the Brighton one. They've lost Caicedo. They've lost McAllister. They've had to bring in the likes of Mahmoud Dahoud, Ansu Fati on loan, great business. They've signed brilliant players, and it works, and it shows that it's a system, not a player-based operation. De Zerbi's got them playing fantastic football, and at the moment, as things stand, they are the highest scorers in the division. But I mean, there is a bit of a caveat. They have conceded the 4th most goals with 16 goals conceded and 21 scored. They walloped Newcastle. They walloped Man United. They got a draw against Liverpool. but then they get thumped by West Ham and they get thumped by Aston Villa. So the Jekyll and Hyde. I understand I said that Villa are in good because of the poor results at times, but the reason Brighton are further up in the excellent category is because of their recruitment and the fact they've lost two key players over the window and potentially more. So Brighton for me have done incredibly well so far. Next up, we have Burnley, Vincent Company's Burnley, who were just putting in bad. I think when Company came up into this league, everyone expected Megamind to be incredible. He was going to revolutionise the league. He was going to put all that energy that he put into the championship side and play progressive, attack-minded football, and they were going to dominate everyone and thump every team in the league. And it's not happened. They've come up. They've got the second worst defence. They've conceded 20 goals. They've got an XG of 0.9 per game, and they signed 15 players in the window. That's ludicrous. And of those 15 players, Trafford and Sander Berge may be the only two that having a real impact. I don't watch a lot of Burnley particularly, but from what I have seen, there's nothing exciting. The Man United game, yes, you could argue they should have got a result in that match, and their only win of the season has been against Luton. So they're in the relegation zone for a reason. They've been bad this season, and Company has not lived up to the hype, nor has this Burnley team, if we're being completely honest. Next up, Chelsea. And Chelsea, I'm going to put them in poor. I understand that the club is in turmoil. I understand that a lot of money's been spent. There's a chopping and changing of managers. There's an owner who doesn't care. I fully get that. And I sympathise with it in a way. I made a video on it a few weeks ago. Todd Bowley does not know how to run the club. But Chelsea, with the players they've got and the manager they've got, there should be a bit of stability. It has started. They're on a 3-game winning streak in all competitions, 2 in the Premier League. And Mudryk has finally started to find his pace. Jackson's starting to step up to the plate. Sterling looked phenomenal in the last game. So maybe it's starting to click, and I think that's what's keeping them from the bad category. They are 11th currently in the league. 2 wins in a row, like I said. The draw against Liverpool was a good result, but then they've lost to West Ham, and I think if they can find some consistency, they'll start to creep up. I do still think Pochettino is the man, and I think a lot of Chelsea players will, or Chelsea fans even, will agree with me. He is the one to take them further forward than where they are, but he needs time and he needs stability. This squad currently, with all the money that's been spaffed around on the likes of Caicedo and Lavia and Jackson and Disassi, it was never going to work straight away. And for them to be higher than where they are, a lot of people will say, oh, but you spent this and this and this. Money doesn't make teams. It's the manager, it's the style. You can splash as much cash as you want. We've seen it a million times before. It doesn't work. Chelsea, for me, the only thing keeping them from average is just consistency at the moment, and they might get it. Next up, we have Crystal Palace, and they are our first average team so far this season. When Hodgson came back, I think there was a lot of sort of, here we go, mid-table, nothing exciting, and that's what Brighton are. They've never finished outside the league season between 40 and 50 points. They are arguably the most consistent team in the league. They've lost Zaha, which was a huge thing for them, but they've not particularly recruited to replace him, and it's working. They've got the likes of Eze still there, Elise's there, Edouard has stepped up to the plate. I think he's on 4 goals so far this season. Palace have actually looked good. I can't argue it. Palace look like a decent team. They're 9th currently in the league, and they've got a net spend of about 30 million. They've signed Dean Henderson, who's a good first choice keeper. You can't deny that. Rob Holding brings a bit of experience, a bit of magic hairline reformity. The decent. I think Palace look okay this season. That's why they're going in average. Next up, we have Everton, poor, and again, don't shoot me. I understand that to rank Everton alongside Chelsea who are up in 11th, Everton, but the point is Everton have come into the season with little to no expectation. Let's be real. They've battled relegation for the past 2, maybe 3 seasons. They've lost some really key players in the likes of Moyes Keane, Iwobi. Maybe Moyes Keane's a bad example, but they've sold a lot of players and they've had to bring in people. Beto looks decent. Jack Harrison looks like a good acquisition from Leeds. Calvert-Lewin started to finally score, and they're actually picking up results. The 3-0 win over Bournemouth being a big one. They beat Brentford not too long ago. And I've always said I don't think Everton will get relegated. I just think there's 3 or 4 worse teams. And at the moment, there is. The 17th. They're out of the relegation zone, or 16th even, and they're doing what is expected. They're staying out of the relegation zone, putting up a good fight against teams. Yes, they are still dreadful at the moment, but what's the expectation? Were Everton fans thinking they were going to finish in the top half under Sean Dyche with this team and the players they've lost and the players they've signed? Not really. So it can't be average, but I think poor's a reasonable opinion. Fulham, we're putting them in average now. They have lost Mitrovic. He was their key scorer last season, 12 goals. And then the season before, when they were in the Championship, he broke all sorts of goal scoring records. Fulham have signed the likes of Alex Iwobi. Um, they've not particularly recruited brilliantly. And when Bobby Reed and Vinicius are your two highest goal scorers on 3 goals each, that signifies a concern. And they've signed Jimenez. He's not hit the ground running. Willian's not getting any younger. I think the fact that they've gone through this window, keeping Marco Silva, keeping the players they have, not necessarily losing any other big name players like Willian. They kept Paulinho. So overall, it was a good window, and I think for where they are in the league at the moment, in 12th, that's a fair assessment. I think average is decent for them. Liverpool were going to put us in good. The only reason we're not excellent is because we look poor in the Chelsea game at the start of the season. We do keep conceding goals first in these games. Tottenham, obviously, that game we've gone over a million times. Brighton, we looked poor. The only coming into the season, the expectation was top four, and now there's talk of a title challenge. Bit premature, in my opinion. We have a squad capable of doing it, yes, and the players have performed brilliantly. We've recruited very well and sold very well. But the only reason we're not in excellent is because our defensive stability is still poor, and we really do need to improve that if we want to try for the title, which, let's be real, is a bit premature at the moment. Let's focus on top four and just say we've been good so far, not excellent. Next up, we have Luton. And this is going to be the one that gets me a lot of stick because I'm putting them in average. Now, let me preface this by saying I know Luton have been dreadful, but, and this is the big but here, who in this video, anyone who wants to comment, please make sure you do. Whoever can comment saying, oh, I knew Luton were going to be absolutely fine. I knew Luton were going to be, doing okay. You're a liar because we all thought Luton were going to come up and get straight back down, and I was one of those people. Luton are currently out of the relegation zone. They're on 4 points. They picked up their first ever Premier League win against Everton. They looked good against Tottenham. We can't deny that. Chelsea, at times, they have moments. Luton came up with just no expectation. With unexpected goals as well. They should be 15th. They're currently 17th. The recruitment hasn't been brilliant, but they've signed experienced players, Ross Barkley being one of them. Tahith Chong's not a bad acquisition, but other than that, the likes of Kaminsky and Jacob Brown from the Championship, it's a gamble with Championship players stepping up when you've already got a team that's stepping up from the Championship. To sign more on top is really a gamble. I think they've done good with it so far in terms of coping with the pressure. I do think they're going to get a few sneak results at home. There is a case for poor, and I might change my mind as this video goes on, but for me, I think Luton have done average based on the expectation, the club's value at the moment, the uncertainty around the ground getting rebuilt and developed. I think they've done okay. And like I said, expected goals, they should be higher than where they are. Man City, we are going to put them in good. And look, City are always, every season, here. The only reason I'm putting them in good, not excellent, is because they've struggled in the past few weeks. And I feel like their system is so Haaland relevant. Like Haaland has to be the focal point, that when he's not playing well, the team doesn't play well necessarily at the moment. It's not like in the past where if Haaland's not there, there's other people who can score and do, such and such. Alvarez is still scoring goals, but you lost Gundogan, who scored a good number for you. Mahrez is gone. Doku's came in and he's stepped up and looked great, but he's not quite to that level yet. Kovacic isn't looking like the player we thought he would be. He's meant to be the Gundogan replacement. You're never going to replace Gundogan. City have recruited well. Anyone they sell, they sign a replacement. Nunez hasn't particularly done brilliant so far, but the likes of Doku, Gvardiol have done great. Kovacic, not so much. For me, I just think City are good. When they don't have Rodri, they are poor. But based on their own standards, they've set so exceptionally high, by the way, that for them to be where they are at the moment, it can only be good. They're not top of the league. And it says so much about how good your team is that when you're not top of the league, it's considered good, not excellent. Like it's just unreal. Next up, Manchester United. This one is just, it's bad, isn't it? Let's be real. No bias. This is not a bias thing. The only reason United are there and not higher up, yes, they've won 50% of their matches, but let's analyse the ones they've won. So the Nottingham Forest game, they were 2-0 down in 4 minutes. Great to come back. Fantastic. Wolves, they scraped that win. Very, very much so. Burnley, again, scraped it. Burnley actually looked the better team for pretty much the whole game if you analyse it that way. Onana has not been a good signing so far. Mason Mount has not been a good signing so far. Amrabat's playing at left back at times. There's injuries galore. Yes, that does have something. And as I'm going, I am going to talk myself into poor more than I am bad. But injuries have played a big part in it, but transfers, they haven't recruited where they need to. Hoyland looks good, yes, but they needed a rock solid CDM, and they faffed around trying to get Amrabat so much that they only got him on the last day of the transfer window for, I think the dispute was over £2 million. And Ten Hag really does need to sort of get the ship steady because he could be out of a job soon if this carries on. Um, the defeat to Tottenham, the defeat to Arsenal, it just looks bad from United. Palace, they beat them 3-0 in the cup and then lose 1-0 in the league. It baffles me. So, no complaints, but mm, poor. Not bad. Be grateful that you got poor. All right, just be happy with that. Next up, Newcastle. And Newcastle, we're actually putting them in good. I think the only thing that's keeping them out of excellent is again, it's that expectation. If you ask Newcastle fans this season where they'd like to finish, a lot of them just say they just want a cup run. They're in Champions League and they're actually managing it very well. They drew against West Ham the other day, which we'll get onto in a moment. They thumped Villa on the opening day of the season. They were unlucky in the Liverpool defeat. The Man City game, they hung in there at times. They look good. They've still got Isak scoring goals and a lot of other players contributing. They need to strengthen. They didn't strengthen in the areas they needed to. Livramento and Hall, great for the future. Livramento looked great in the cup game against City. Tonali's potentially facing a betting ban, which obviously they didn't know about, but you're going to lose the player that was meant to be your marquee signing. So essentially, you've signed two fullbacks and Harvey Barnes, who isn't even playing. He's out injured till New Year. So the recruitment could have been better, but overall, I think it's been a good season for Newcastle, given the fact they're in Champions League. They didn't particularly strengthen in the summer, and they've somehow just stayed steady. They might still push for top four. They might drop off. Who knows? Next up, Nottingham Forest, and we're putting them in poor. Now, the big story last season for Forest was they signed all these players, copious amounts of players, more than you need, Forest fans. But they've done it again, and they've signed 14 players this summer, including the likes of Hudson-Odoi, which is a great acquisition, by the way, Chris Wood, which isn't a good acquisition, by the way, and, Origi on loan. He might score a few wonderful goals. We don't know. He did it for us plenty of times. Forest this season, though, are struggling to win games. There's draw. They're really just struggling. And with the players you've got, because of all the rotation and because there's no set line up and because it just doesn't feel fluid. The Chelsea game was the only game I looked at where I thought, you look like you've got it. Like you've cracked this code. Awani still looks decent, but they really do need to get a stable starting 11 and don't just keep chopping and changing and signing people and releasing 20 players and signing 20. And it's not working at the moment. I don't have a lot to say on Forest, really, so I'm just going to put them in poor. I might be being harsh, and maybe I don't know much of what I'm saying, but Forest haven't looked great this season. Next up, Sheffield, bad, in the bin. If you lose 8-0 to Newcastle, you're bad. No wins, one draw. Let's just, quite frankly, move on. No, actually, I've got one thing to say. Does the Cameron Archer deal remind anyone of Ryan Brewster when Sheffield signed him? An exceptional amount of money on someone who, quite frankly, is unproven in the league. Heckingbottom's going to be gone soon. Let's face it. Tottenham, excellent. I mean, what can you say? Fluid football. They're not missing Harry Kane at all. They've just completely revolutionised that attack without him. They're undefeated in the league. Rich Arlison's looking good. Son's looking phenomenal. James Maddison is signing of the season. And I hope Newcastle fans are upset that they didn't get him. I don't hope, but I know they are. They just look fantastic at the moment. They will drop because that's the expectation, and maybe that's harsh, but so far this season they look unbelievable. And the draw against Arsenal, they were great at times. They thumped Manchester United. They beat Liverpool. They're doing really well. The only thing is they've not faced City yet, and that will be the big test. If they can beat City, we're talking about title challenges. Let's face it, top four, a lot of people are saying is dead set at the moment. If they beat City, the title's on. Really, it could be. West Ham, we're putting them in excellence as well. Now, that one is controversial, I admit, but the reason I'm saying West Ham in excellent, they've just lost Declan Rice. David Moyes last season was struggling with relegation. He was just teetering above it. They've come out this season and they're seventh. They beat Brighton. They beat Chelsea. Kudus, James Ward-Prowse all look fantastic. And for them to be where they are after just coming off of winning the Europa Conference League, still in the Europa League, winning games in that competition, with David Moyes as your manager, that is incredible. And West Ham fans should be happy. They look fantastic. Yes, there's still moments. The defence is still a bit leaky, but James Ward-Prowse putting balls into Kurt Zuma and Aguerd, and then you've got Antonio up front. You're causing nightmares for opposition. And Liverpool did struggle against them as well, actually. Jarrod Bowen's still there. An 8-year contract for him. So, West Ham, it's been a good season so far. And Wolves, we're going to put them in average. Now, this is the final one, so if we go out with a bang. Wolves, the reason they're in average is because they've sold a lot of players. They're currently 14th, which isn't bad for Wolves at the moment, but they lost Nunez, they lost Neves, they lost Jimenez, they lost Conor Kouadi. They've lost so many players and haven't had the money to recruit. And Gary O'Neill is proving that he is a Premier League quality manager. And maybe if a certain other team had kept him, maybe they wouldn't be in bad, and maybe these would be swapped. But they're in average because they look good. Against United, they were unlucky not to get the win. They beat Manchester City. They've got spirit, Wolves. It doesn't matter who's there. Wolves have some sort of weird fighting spirit, and they're still a bit of a bogey team for Man City. They've beat them a few times in the past few seasons. So, for me, Wolves, I'm happy with where they are. I think they've actually done very well. The big thing is the financial aspect. They haven't had a lot of money to recruit, and they've still done it fairly well. And they've signed a manager who, given the chance, could develop into one of the better managers in the Premier League. Bit premature, maybe, but the work he did at Bournemouth, he's doing it at Wolves. We'll just have to wait and see. And that is the list. Thank you, everyone, for watching. So just to run through, Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield, the relegation teams at the moment are in bad. Brentford, Chelsea, Everton, Forest, United, poor. Palace, Fulham, Luton, Wolves in average. And then Villa, Liverpool, City, Newcastle in good. West Ham, Tottenham, Brighton, Arsenal in excellent. If there's any you disagree with, please make sure you leave a comment telling me why and tell me why I am a moron. I love to hear it, and I will respond in a nice way, in a good way. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Let's try and get this one to 1,500 views. I want to try and hit 100 subscribers by Christmas as well. So please, guys, make sure you click that subscribe button, and I will see you soon for another video.